Hey, Chef, welcome back to Coaching NainwalPhysics. This is week 2, and we're going to take a look at the progress, and really that's all we can do as a coach. So, this link to the Notion document will be in the description. I've been adding those lately. And what you can do here is you can expand to see everything that we talked about previously, so it's better for organization to just have these toggle things there. So I'll add a video and there's summaries that we kind of went over last week. And so I'm just gonna close this one and we'll start talking about week 2. So previously the rapid was 778. Yesterday I looked and it was 872. So pretty much a 100-point increase in the chest-to-com rapid, which is great to see. And I think the first thing we'll do is probably adjust this 940 peak rating because I was looking at the rating graph and the 940 was on September 8th, 2022, which is when this account was created. But if we look at all time, I accidentally hit compare. When we look at all time history graph, you can see that he fell down to 782 and then rose up to 822 and has been steady there. So he's never been near that 940 mark. Actually, that was still kind of a technically, it was an active rating, but it's more provisional than anything since he quickly went to 782. So a more realistic peak would probably be this 884. So I'm actually going to adjust that here. Or 884 and here. Now, did he actually beat 884 recently? Oh, actually, yeah, 887 is the new peak. So when you look at it this way, they actually did set a new rating record. So that's good to see. And also just looking at the rating graph, so we started on the 20th. So you see the 20th was the first pretty much lesson. So he's around 778 and went up 100 points. But this 100 points isn't that surprising considering that he's already done a similar move, like from 750 to 884 and then fell down 100. Like that's completely normal. If you're new to chess, you might think like, oh, you're struggling to improve and stuff, but usually what happens is you level up at a certain point and then you have a big jump and then you're either going to maintain that new level or you might fall down a little bit temporarily. But getting back up, you see, is not the problem. So we might fluctuate between 750 to 900, I'd say. And that would be completely normal. It's like some would be good days, some would be bad days. But at some point, like the goal is to push up above 900 and actually beat this 940 and make progress towards 1,000. So that's still the goal. Before, I think they were around 55th percentile. Now they're 63.5 percentile. And yeah, so that's what I want to cover for the actual rating progress. And yeah, I'll add the video here and suggestions after the video. I may remember to do this or not during this video. And so a lot of progress was made, nearly 100 points gained. One thing to note is that last time, remember I suggested doing 5 chess tempo standard puzzles, spending at least 3 minutes before making the first move. That would be a total of 15 minutes a day tactics training at the minimum. And this was not actually done, and we'll see why I use chess tempo to do tactics, because it's very easy to track that progress, whereas on chess.com, you can't track every single solve that was done. Plus, they push you to be faster in general because they give more points if you solve it quickly. And on Lead Chess, you can't look at someone else's tactics training history. And even on your own tactics training history, you can't see how much time you spent on a puzzle unless you're doing like the puzzle storm or something. But that's a little different than just doing normal tactics where you're taking time as well. Okay, so if we look at the chess tempo history, you can actually sort, so they've done 128 puzzles. If we sort by solve time, and you click it 2 times so it shows highest first. And this is kind of like a thing where you might leave it, or you can actually leave a puzzle and come back to it the next day or something, and that might be part of why this time, or like the browser just open overnight. But you see there's a 2 minute, a 1 minute, 1 minute, but mostly they're under 1 minute. and a lot are just under 30 seconds in general. So they have not followed the suggestion of doing at least 3 minutes before making the first move, which is a problem. But and then they gained 100 points, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Also, if someone was like a normal coach where they're getting paid, it doesn't really matter if your students are doing the homework or not because the coach is still collecting money. Um, but if you actually care about like the improvement, it's like you would want to see them do the work that you kind of assign, even when you try to assign like the minimum amount, so that's not like too overwhelming. Because ideally, like if they had time, I would say do an hour of tactics practice, 30 minutes of like chess tempo solving like this, which would be doing 10 puzzles at 3 minutes each, and then the rest doing like fast tactics either at chess.com or Elite Chess or anywhere, whatever you want to do it. Even on chess tempo, you can do the blitz mode. Um, but okay, so they didn't really do that, but they have made progress. So we're still going to push again to try to get NainwalPhysics to spend 3 minutes, or at least more than he's currently using. Like I don't know, maybe just start with doing at least 1 minute and then try to scale up from there might make more sense. But I don't know. I never really encountered this situation before, so we'll see. It may become a problem if they're just continue to be stuck, because then it's like, well, there's no other advice other than the advice you're not doing, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling, and it's not quite a big deal yet, but it is something just to be aware of that I feel like to I'm trying to speed run this person to 1200 rapid, and I think the best chance of that would be if they also do like a little bit of the chess tempo training where they spend at least 3 minutes. Might maybe 2 minutes. Okay. Um and yeah, and I talk about this that I was also a fast player and I don't really enjoy calculation training, but it wasn't until like I actually stopped and took more time and realized how helpful it is that like my visualization really went to the next level with chess, even though I don't prefer doing calculation training. Training that I did do on chess tempo was like very beneficial. And I think if I had started doing it more, like I could continue to improve even today. But I'm not really focused on my actual chess improvement. I'm just focused on my puzzle rush and doing in-game leaderboard stuff. So, okay. Anyway, so to questions asked during the week, said whenever he attacks, there is a loophole in king safety, how to counter this. I took a look through the games, and I didn't really see a lot of examples of it. But in general, I gave advice that castling quickly and not moving too many pawns in front of the king, whereas castle is the first step. Also, you have to calculate to know if any of their threats against your king are real or not. If not, then you can keep attacking. And this is also partly that you gain from experience. Like you try something, and then if your attack failed because your king was unsafe, then you have that example and you can see, well, where could you have saved it? Because usually you could still attack, but you might have to cover some of their threats in the meantime. And that all comes back down to the blunder check as well. So if you really understand what they're trying to do immediately when they make their move, then you can see if you actually have to address it or if you can just continue attacking. So it might be a case of being too focused on your own ideas rather than always looking at your opponent's ideas as well. And then you can start to find more multi-purpose moves that will stop your opponent's ideas but also progress whatever you want it to do. But also, I said the main thing that's stopping games is hanging pieces, and you have to be familiar with a lot of tactical patterns to really know if your king is safe or not as well. Okay. Let them know that if he has questions about specific games, you can link them in the chat. And he sent me this game, asked what the blunder was. Okay, so we'll take a look at this game. And I think I mentioned, okay, like move 20 was the main thing that I want to bring to your attention. But okay, we get this, and they're white in this game. So early on, we get the queens off. and developing. They take, which from a positional point of view, I don't really like, just because the bishop pair is a slight advantage. Um, More often than not, like if the position is open, it's better to have bishops than knights. And usually, like a lot of strong players, they wouldn't just give up the bishop pair unless there was a good reason. But here, it really was just a random trade. Like there's no necessary compensation or anything. Like it might be one thing if their only option was taking back with the pawn, but they can take back with the bishop and save their pawn structure. Because if they took, they would have double pawns, and these would be like isolated as well. But they just kind of took and gave black the bishop here. So already, I think a lot of strong players, they would prefer black's position here. Let me see what the engine says. Actually, it's winning because, oh, that's why you do it. Because you remove the defender and then take that. Okay, so that was actually a good point. But in general, though, a lot of times, no, because I didn't really calculate, I just looked and saw, oh, there was a capture. But you see, like I always say, you want to analyze the forcing moves and calculate them until the position is quiet. And because I didn't do that, I didn't see that that there was actually a good point to it. So if it happens to me, it can definitely happen under 1000 rated. So okay, so we take that pawn, attacking f7, king defends, defend the pawn, that's great. Take, and that's great. So actually, they're playing like perfectly at this point. Already, like the engine said, it was +2. So the question is, how did this go wrong? Because when we looked at the other games last week, NainwalPhysics started, he was winning in a lot of the games, but then at some point, he kind of lost the game somehow. Like he gave up his advantage and then it went downhill. Here, I probably would have kept the bishop and just found some way to defend against this, like maybe moving this or something. But they trade, it's not the end of the world. Okay, and I get this knight to an outpost square. And this is outpost squares. Some of you may or may not know what that is. We basically, you get a knight in front of like one of their pawns, and there's no pawns that can kick the knight on either side, then it's really hard to dislodge the knight from here. And if you get an outpost square that's way deep in their enemy camp, the better. Like, so this is on the 5th rank, but the 6th rank is like even better in a lot of cases. Like if you can get a knight here and it's protected by a pawn, like that's what you really want. Now here they could eventually trade, but sometimes like they don't really want to have to do that trade. So anyway, it does look like they were trying to at least attack it because we don't have a pawn guarding a knight, so we don't want to just let them take the knight. The problem is, and this is move 20, they move knight a6. The problem is if you do a blunder check, you want to go knight a6. What checks, captures, and threats does the opponent have? And the thing is, they can go king b7 and attack your knight. And now where are you going to put your knight? If you didn't see this, or you didn't decide where you would put your knight in this situation, then you shouldn't have moved knight a6. And that is like a key lesson that like I even had to teach like 1600s that they weren't always doing. So when you go here, you would have to see that they can attack, and then you have to find a safe square for the knight. Now it's one thing if you tried to do that and then you thought you saw a square, but it wasn't the case. Like maybe you thought you can come back to b4, but the pawn and the bishop is guarding it. But if you didn't give thought into what their forcing moves would be and where you could bring the knight to safety, then that's why you make these kind of mistakes. Now it turns out that they didn't take, but they took a pawn instead. But it turns out if you go here, there's some crazy tactics that kind of lets you get away without being down a piece, starting with e5. But like I probably wouldn't even find. Well, maybe I would find it, but it would be very difficult for like a lot of people to really find this move if they made knight a6 without seeing that king b7 would nearly trap the knight. because then you're saying, okay, you go here, they go here, and then you're already planning to play e5 to save the knight somehow. Like, there's no way that's really what happened. It's mostly that this kind of just blundered the knight, and it's just lucky that there was a resource of knight e5 in this case. Because if you look here, what if they were to take, then you can go here, and then you're just down like a pawn. And actually, you have a better position, partly because their pawn structure is worse. They have like more pawn islands. These are double pawns. White's pawns are not doubled, and so things are just better. And actually, somewhere we were up a pawn. Oh yeah, it was this pawn, the e5 pawn that we talked about earlier. So you're already up a pawn, so giving up that pawn back to save the knight makes sense. But then they just took on h2, and then what happened? Now it's kind of scary. Nothing's really going on. Okay, it was a draw. So, but really, they probably should have lost this game. Because I don't think e5 would have been found. Or maybe it would have, I don't know. But regardless, it ended up becoming kind of a worse position later on. And just because this player has definitely like hung queens on in one move, that's why I think the knight a6 probably should be looked at as a blunder and is the main problem with this game. That was a draw. Like, a lot of people, when they send games to analyze and ask like how do they get better, what can they improve on, they either send like games they win or a draw, which is always odd to me because you learn a lot more from games you lose than you win. And at least this one was a draw, which it kind of makes some sense. But I see on Reddit, commonly on like the chess beginner subreddit, like people ask like how to improve when they link a game that they won. Like, in a way, I don't know if it's like showing off or they just really don't like looking at their losses. But that really is the way to get better, is just looking at your losses, understanding why you made a mistake, and trying to figure out the reasons why. And I just said that twice, sorry. And then trying to figure out how not to do it in the future. Um, yeah, so let's see. Okay, so that's enough for that game. And I think like part of, okay, so they mentioned they got to 1,000 in chess.com puzzles. And I think part of the reason they didn't do the 3 minutes for chess tempo is because the chess.com, when you do puzzles, they give you more points if you can get them fast. Now, no, if you spend like an hour to solve a puzzle, you'll get, and you get it right, you'll get 1 point. That's like, they used to be, you would lose points, I think. But now they give you at least 1 point if you get it right, unless they changed it since then. But on chess tempo, you will be able to get the full points whether you solve it in 10 seconds or like 10 hours. So it's definitely beneficial to just take your time and try to get it right rather than try to get it fast. Like, there's a time and place for practicing fast tactics, time and place for practicing slow tactics. Okay, he asked, what should I do when an opponent has material advantage and is continuously pressuring me for a trade? Now, for me, mostly through me progressing as a chess player, I had a habit of just resigning when I'm down material. Like, it used to be so bad that if I was down a pawn, I would just resign because I feel like, okay, something definitely went wrong. I need to relearn what to do in the opening and try not to repeat that mistake because ideally I just don't go down material because it's hard to come back from. But then as I got better, I learned that one, you can try to trade down to a king and rook ending. I mean, king and pawn versus king ending, where you get the opposition. So sometimes there's a lot of end games where you can kind of force a draw if you know what you're doing. But the other alternative, which I usually do more often, is you try to complicate the game, try to open up lines, and attack the king. Because think about what happens when you opposite side castle. Like you're trying to, let me see, is there an analysis board somewhere? Okay, let's just say You're just making some moves. Okay, so let's say you have this opposite castle situation. A lot of the times, um, you're just trying to attack their king somehow, and they're trying to attack your king. And it gets really tactical, and it's very likely there'll be a decisive result. Um, and that's kind of what you want to force whenever you're down material. You want to try to win in the middle game and not let it get to an end game. And that's kind of how I would recommend, like when you're down material and you want to try to avoid trades when possible. Some trades are unavoidable. And then the other thing you can do is when they do want to trade, you can allow them to trade in some ways that might benefit you. So like let's say you had the bishop here and they had the bishop here and you're down material, so you know they want to trade. Well, let them trade one of their bishops for your knights, and now you have the bishop here. So now you are down material, but now you've gained a small advantage in the bishop here, and maybe that'll help you later down. So I'll do stuff like that as well whenever I know someone is definitely trying to trade, or even without being down material. When I play a low-rated player that always trades, um, it's usually easy to set up situations where you allow them a seemingly equal trade, but it's actually beneficial for you. Okay. Or like you try to set up a trade to like double their pawns or something, and then they'll just allow it. So in that situation, I would sometimes give up a bishop for a knight if I could double their pawns, if I thought I could attack and win their pawns later on. Okay. And then also like in terms of those end games, so there's a king and pawn versus king ending, but also opposite color bishop endings are often a draw, even if you're down 2 pawns. And I saw like this game, like shortly after I gave that advice, that ended with a opposite color bishop ending. Let's see what happened here. And actually, in this situation, they were playing a higher rate opponent, so 969. At this point, they could have won the game. So if you want, you can pause the video and try to find a play for black. Okay, so they could have went here, and if they white recapture with the rook, then you take and make a queen. And if they don't take, then you can just win the free rook. So that would have been the move to c. They just moved the bishop, and now the tactic no longer works. They eventually go rook d1 anyway, but it's already too late. And now we get a opposite color bishop ending. The king is in front of their pawn. They can't take this pawn because the bishop is guarding it. And they can't really remove it anyway because this is a dark square bishop when they have a light square bishop. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So black is down a pawn, but this is a complete draw. Okay. So let's keep the engine on and see how the game played out. So they get a pawn back. Now they lose another pawn, but it's okay because you see the evaluation didn't move at all still. So the thing is, as long as you stay and blocking the pawn, they can't really make any progress. If they move this, you can take the pawn. If they try to move this, you can trade. And just because each pawn is kind of, it has an opponent on the same file, it's hard for them to really create a pass pawn. Even here, they can't really create a pass pawn because you could just take. So you can leave this bishop on this diagonal, and it's always defending this pawn. And I guess they could try to take those. Okay, so let's actually look at what happens if, let's say, you move here. Okay, well, what did they want to do? Oh, they want to do g4 and try to simplify. Okay, so g4, king h5. Okay, so yeah, that would be better. I'm curious what happens if we just leave the bishop here and then they go for this pawn. Oh, then we could just take. So it's not as bad. Now they could still try to take that. Let's say they go here. And let's say we didn't know about the g4 plan. And they take. let's say we still don't know about the g4 plan. They take, look at this, it's still a draw. We have one pawn, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns. Because it's an opposite color bishop, it's a draw somehow. Now maybe, okay, the reason is because you have to go g4, and then you have this. And actually, okay, now that's why, because they can't get the bishop here to guard us queening. So it's not, that was a pretty extreme example, but it does show part of how obstacle bishops, like a lot of crazy things can happen even when you're down a lot of pawns. So what happened in the game was they moved king e7, and that's a problem because after king g7, you cannot stop them from promoting. You can give a check, but then they go here, now they're promoting next move. So they gave up the defense of them queening, and they did do that. And then they got a queen, and now the game is over. But that was like one thing, like all you have to do was not move this king out the way, allowing them to queen the pawn by force, and then you would have been fine. Maybe even just seeing this move, because it's a check, and it also threatens to capture the pawn. Like this would have been really great. Still a draw, unfortunately, but this would have been like a much better plan to go for. So either seeing that as well as seeing why king e7 is wrong would have helped make a better move in that situation. Okay, and then there's another game that they wanted me to look at that they won, and I did give them some feedback already. But okay, let's see. When I go for these gambits, I'm not sure I like that, just because it gives up material early on, and usually a lot of gambits, they're kind of risky, and I don't know, but sometimes it works out. Like, I'm not really gonna try to force them to play any specific opening or not. I would encourage to try to find opening they like and then stick with it so that they're learning more for each game instead of switching it up all the time, because that can also impede your progress. Because a lot of strong players, they play well because they are familiar with the positions that come out of their openings. Even if you don't study them necessarily, just by playing the same thing over and over again, you start to learn what's good and what's bad. You kind of build your own theory. So this was a key moment. So they're up. They are up 5 points in terms of material, and mostly just coming from that rook. Probably everything coming from that rook, to be honest. And then they give this check, and the way I would deal with this is, okay, you're up material, you want to trade down. Easiest way to trade is queen e2. They can't take the bishop because they're pinned, so this is just an easy way to trade material. Now they didn't do this, and now they also can't castle, and their king is just kind of out. It's on a light square, and they do have a light square bishop, so at some point, a lot of things, annoying things could happen. Now, it worked out here. They won the game just like 10 moves later or so. But against a stronger opponent, leaving the queen on like this could be like a losing mistake because it might allow them to get enough counterplay to eventually like trick white into blundering. But if you trade off queens, your likelihood of blundering away your material advantage goes down significantly. So, and you do see like they're already getting some material back, and I didn't even see this when I looked at it. Bishop can just take the queen. So you see, these are like the characteristic mistakes that need to be erased before you can progress. And so studying extra openings, studying strategy, studying all of that means next to nothing when there's a piece that's ready to be taken, especially a queen. You don't see it. Now this is a backwards move, so those are harder to kind of see sometimes, but usually this is like the kind of thing you do have to get better at. And let's see, knight f3 was played in 3.7 seconds. So they just did not see the free queen, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what happened. They eventually give up the queen, and they checkmate him. Okay. But yeah, those one move like tactics are like the main thing to work on. What was their rating? Let's see. The opponent's rating was 785, so okay. And that was it for that, so... Okay, we spent like 30 minutes going over some games and the previous stuff we talked about. Now I will look at some chess tempo from the last week. So let me refresh so that it's not sorted by solve time. And then, and also you see on the 29th, there was only 3 attempts. So actually I can see it from here too. So 8 attempts, 1 attempt. Okay. So I would have liked to see at least 5 each day, but okay. And also, like this was the real thing that struck out to me because so last video was on it was around this time, came out around the 22nd, and so by 24th, like they should have been doing like 3 minutes per puzzle. But you see, there's a big streak of red here, where almost every puzzle was solved in under 1 minute, and most of them under 20 and 15 seconds actually. So we'll take a look at like this streak of red and try to see like what's going on. And it'll illustrate why I want them to spend more time, especially like this one. The average solve time was 1 minute 46 seconds. Now they did spend 58 seconds on it, so that's really great. They spent a lot more time on this one that had an average solve time that was higher. But then here's one that's like 1 minute 8 second average solve time out of all chess tempo standard users, and they did it in 12 seconds and got it wrong. Like that kind of careless mistake is like when they miss picking up the queen in that one thing, or when they move the knight to a6 and potentially could have gotten it trapped. Like they'll play these kind of blunders way too fast, and that's the only thing that I need NainwalPhysics to focus on for him to get like hundreds of rating points of gain easily. Like he needs to get that habit in the subconscious to really be looking at forcing moves and just being more careful in general and not playing too fast. So let's take a look at this one. And if you want, you can pause the video and try to solve along. Okay. Now, the first thing I see is usually, let's say when you're playing a game, you want to look at what they're trying to do first. But when I'm doing chess tactics, sometimes I just look at what I'm trying to do. But sometimes it's important to see what they want to do, because if they're threatening like a checkmate, then you know you have to do something like either checkmate them faster or find some way to actually defend against it. But a lot of times I'll just look at what I can do. And then if I don't find anything, maybe then I'll start looking at it through other lenses. So that's a slight difference between how I do normal tactics training and playing a game. But the first move that came to mind was just taking a knight, but pawn takes, and I don't see any other good forcing moves because this is defended by that. Now the next thing I look at is I see this capture. And this is interesting because they can't take with the rook because I can take back with the queen. And this is a fork of these two pieces. So this one seems to be winning material. I'm guessing most people took knight takes d4. So we'll be able to see what the most common mistake was. So yeah. So the most common mistake was knight takes d4 as predicted. And like I said, knight takes d4 was the first move that came to my mind. But you look at it and you see, well, what's the follow-up? That's why it's important to be able to see the full tactic, this full solution before making the first move. And why I say you want to spend at least 3 minutes, because if you're just new to chess or you're playing too fast or both, then you don't really know how far you need to calculate before you can actually confidently play a move, because then you're just playing a move and you're hoping for the best, or you don't really know what to look for. The thing is, you want to just look at forcing moves. So there's a capture, they capture back. Well, where's your forcing move that's going to win material checkmate? There is none. Okay, what else can we do? We can do this. It's attacking this and this. If they take, we take. That's way better. So when you're looking at all the captures and threats for both sides, then things make a lot more sense, and you can confidently reject this move and play this move. And you could do this in 12 seconds as well, but that's when you become like a much stronger player. You'll be able to discard this and then see that this is good, and they can't do that because of that. But when starting out, spend at least 3 minutes, really try to think, is your move the correct one? what force moves do you have? Do you see a f2 winning material or checkmating? Okay, so let's go back. And let's go to this one. Oh wait, I won't have to keep pressing back like this. I'll just do it like that. And okay, so let's go here. And okay, if you want, you can pause the video. Okay, now here is black to move. This is a part where I do look at what they're doing first because their knight move directly attacks the queen. So no matter what we do, there's a lot of moves that will just not work that we can just disqualify because they don't do anything about protecting the queen. It's like all these moves almost I can just pretty much disqualify automatically. Um, but you're looking for the force moves in general. So force moves, knight with a check, and here. And actually, I don't see any other captures in the position. Now there are threats like this to threaten their queen, but chances are it's not going to work out. It might be something to look at if everything else fails. But the key thing about this, aside from just looking at every checks, capture, and threats manually, there's a clue, like different clues for tactics, like some defect in the position that suggests a tactic could be present. And the one for this is that these queens are on the same diagonal, and this queen is undefended. So if we give the right knight check, we can win the queen. Now if we go knight takes h3, the queen can take, and now, we can't take the queen anymore because the queen moved. But knight e2 check, the queen cannot do anything. They take with the rook, and then we win the queen. So let's see what the mistake was here. So knight h3 is actually the most common mistake. And we know that we can't do that because they can just take, so the tactic doesn't work. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Alright, so in game one, we had a lot of those from the last video. And the first thing I'm seeing is we could take the rook, but the bishop will take. And now all we've done is trade, so I don't feel like we've solved the problem. Now the question is, and this is an obstacle bishop ending if we do that, so and we know how easily those can be drawn. Go here, they just take. So, because the bishop would have been here, if we go here, the bishop would just take. So that doesn't seem to be the best. Now, given that idea that we're trying to promote this pawn maybe is pretty far advanced, if we go d7, we're threatening to then take the rook because we blocked the bishop. So imagine if we had two moves, we can go d7 and then take the rook and then promote with a queen next move. But if we go here, how would they stop us? Well, they can try to take the rook, or they can try to take the pawn. Now if we go here and they take the rook, well, they just gave up their back rank, and we get a queen. Now if we go here and they take with the bishop, well, we can't take the rook because they take back with the bishop. When we go here, they take with the bishop, we can take the bishop, and now we're up material because we have a rook and a bishop, and they only have a rook. So this is the key move. And then taking the bishop. Now if we look at the mistakes, rook takes c8 was played a ton of times. Now if we take here, we see we get this obstacle bishop ending. Even though white is up with 3 pawns versus 2, this is a draw because obstacle bishop endings very difficult to cover everything because white's covering the light squares, black cannot cover the light squares, only with a king. So yeah, this isn't really gonna go anywhere. So definitely, if you're down material, try to look for ways to force an obstacle bishop ending, and that can usually get you a draw. Okay, so next one. So here, again, the first thing I noticed is the rook is attacking the queen. So again, so many moves get discarded because they would all allow us losing the queen. So anyway, we gotta move the queen. We can't take because the bishop would take. We could potentially take with the rook, because if the bishop takes, the queen would take. But the problem with that is if we visualize that position, what checks, captures, and threats does the opponent have? Like even just taking the rook, what checks, captures, and threats after this do they have? What they could take back with the bishop? They could also take this rook because now this rook on f1 isn't defended and we'd be getting checkmated. So this is not the move because it blunders that. This looks like a good move because nothing else is guarding, and then the knight's covering a lot of squares. This doesn't work because of the queen. This doesn't work because of the queen. So this looks like a really decent move. And then they would have to move the rook back, and then we get that Arabian mate, I believe. Okay. Or they say queen and knight mate. If it was a rook, it probably would have been similar to an Arabian mate. Okay. Now let's look at the mistakes. Rook takes d6 was actually the most common mistake. Let's see on the other moves. Knight takes f8 was kind of common. So again, we saw rook takes d6 does not work because that's going to be checkmate. But some people got the first move right, and then they took with the knight. So yeah, taking with the knight is just not checkmate. I don't even know if it's winning, but um, I'm not going to look at it, but there's a checkmate in one, play checkmate in one. So this is a case where you see a good move, look for a better one, or just look at all forcing moves. Like, don't look at the first forcing move you see and just think a while and then play it. Like, look at all the other forcing moves and then try to disqualify the ones that don't. Just try to disqualify until you can find only one move that seems to make sense. Okay, so that was this one. So we look at two more, I guess. Alright, so first thing I see is the rook is lined up to this, and this is a square that can be covered by our bishop, so check here looks like it'll force a checkmate because the queen will go here, and then the rook will take. And I think this is Greco's mate, yeah, Greco's mate. So let's see what the mistake was. So bishop d2 is the most common mistake. I guess they see the discovery and they're just trying to win the rook. That's a good plan. A lot of times you would do this to try to win a queen, but the key here was really to see that the king is like the tag exposed king is who downvoted exposed king. They're crazy. Um, the king is just exposed, so when you go here, you're gonna force a checkmate basically. Okay, now I actually navigate away from that page. Okay, here we go. Okay, last one in that like streak of wrong puzzles. Okay. I don't immediately see what to do. Now I see it. But the first thing I'm looking at is what happens when you take and then they take. So the key thing here is the queen is guarding this diagonal. Once we take and they take, they're not covering like this this first rank with any pieces. So rook here has really good coordination with this, and you'll be able to force a checkmate with moving either piece to h1, I believe. And now they don't show that. Let me see the comments. They say, yeah. So look at the comments. So they say you should go here with the rook, and then you go there for checkmate. And also you could go here for checkmate, like I said. And just show it on this board, like that. Okay, so, and what was the main mistake? Rook e1. Okay, rook e1, that's interesting because there are a lot of tactics that are kind of like this, where, like, let's say the queen was on this square, and then there's some tactics where you go here and you distract the rook, and then when the rook moves, you take the queen for free. But this isn't quite that puzzle. So it's like you go here, they take, and then, okay, you can take their rook, but now you've just traded rooks. So there's no material gain when you do that. So like, what did you see? Like maybe they just thought they moved a king and then you checkmate. But that's why you gotta look at all defensive resources as well as that all defensive resources that the opponent has, and all the checks, captures, and threats that you have as well. Okay, so that's for the tactics. So to sum up, let's see, there's a lot of one-move blunders. I want them, and I guess I'll just edit this after the video, but I will really just recommend them again to spend more time on these chess tempo puzzles because there's a lot that they're missing by moving too fast, and I'm not sure if they are reviewing the solutions to figure out like what's wrong with their move. Like, do they just move? I could kind of maybe be able to guess it just by looking at the time between the puzzles. So let's see. So this one, so they did like this puzzle. Let's look at the ones from when they were wrong. So they did this puzzle at 55:32, and then they did this one at 56:11. So yeah, they're not, I doubt they're spending time to actually review the puzzle after going to the next one. But when you get a puzzle wrong and you see what it is, if you have any questions about the puzzle, you can hit the analysis thing and then turn on the engine. And I usually have like 5 lines, set the lines to 5 so I can see a lot of different moves and what their valuation is immediately. You can also resize this. And then you can actually just see like what's happening. Okay, they like rook takes e1, and we don't have an advantage. I mean, it's a very small advantage after this. And then you can just kind of like see how the game would play out and think, oh, but I thought they would do this, but no. So you can definitely just learn a lot and try a lot of different things out. Like I'm thinking they thought maybe that was a thing because then this would be checkmate. But you gotta assume that your opponent's gonna make the best moves. So Stockfish is the strongest engine right now. So I would just leave it on Stockfish instead of Komodo, and that's it. Okay. So again, try to spend 3 minutes before making a move. And if you really can't stomach that, then at least start with 1 minute and then we'll go from there. But so far, like almost all the puzzles are being solved in under a minute, and you're getting a lot wrong. You're getting some right, which is great, but you're getting a lot wrong. And it's not good enough to be like 50% on this stuff, because if 50% of the time you make a terrible blunder that hangs your queen, then you're just not going to get past a certain rating in chess skill. Like you need to have a lot more consistency of not making those mistakes. Okay, so hope you enjoyed and see you in the next one.